Let's continue our study in the Gospel of John. Now, chapter 9, verses 18 through 23. We can just title this, His Parents Are Investigated. Chapter 9, verses 18 and 19. Therefore, the Jews did not believe about him that he was blind and has had his sight restored until they called the parents of the man that had had his sight restored. And they asked them, saying, Is this your son, whom you say that he was born blind? How therefore does he now see? The Pharisees, called the Jews in this verse, they're in a complicated situation. Because of their own disputes, they were not unified in their fight against the Lord Jesus. So, perhaps to overcome this problem, they investigate the case carefully. The neighbors could possibly be mistaken about the identity of the man who said he had had his sight restored, but the man's parents, they're not going to be mistaken. It's they who really would know whether or not he was born blind. So perhaps hoping for a way out of the situation, they called in the parents. Their first question is this your son? Certainly that's a fair question to ask the parents. And even the implied question, they don't actually ask, but it's implied, whom you say that he was born blind, that's also a fair question. The parents can be expected to give accurate, first-hand eyewitness responses, testimony to these matters. But the question, how therefore does he now see, that's improper. If the parents weren't there, how could they be expected to give an answer? Here the Pharisees are not being logical. Chapter 9, verse 20. Now his parents answered them and said, We know that this one is our son, and that he was born blind. His parents answer the first question, and even the implied second question, properly, as indeed they should have answered. They were eyewitnesses and could give valid testimony about these two things, and their answers only prove the obvious fact. This man was born blind. Chapter 9, verse 21. But how he now sees, we do not know, or who opened his eyes, we do not know. He is of age. Ask him. He himself will speak concerning himself. Certainly they heard the testimony of their own child, that he who was called Jesus healed their child, but they didn't want to be involved in this case. And assuming they were not eyewitnesses to this miracle, their comments about how their son could have come to be healed would only be what we call hearsay. I heard him say this and that. How does it contribute to an effort to find the truth if all the parents can say is, well, we're his parents and we heard him say that the man named Jesus healed him. The healed man himself is right there. They should hear directly from him. Chapter 9, verse 22 and 23. His parents said these things because they were afraid of the Jews, for already the Jews had agreed that if someone acknowledges him as Christ, he should be expelled from the synagogue. Therefore his parents said, He's of age, ask him. The term here, expelled from the synagogue, the expression expelled from the synagogue is the Greek word aposunagogos. It's only used in this verse here and John chapter 12, verse 42, and John 16, verse 2. In Luke 6:22, there's another word, aphorizo, which is actually more general, exclude. But the word here in John, aposunagogos, is about being excluded from the synagogue. As he often does, the Apostle John gives an explanation to help the reader. The Pharisees had already made a ruling that people who acknowledge Christ are going to be prohibited from attending synagogue. The scope of this ruling wasn't explained. Does it apply to all synagogues in Israel or perhaps only the synagogues there in Jerusalem? We don't know, but it certainly would have affected the parents, and they didn't want to have this kind of problem, despite the fact that there had been an obvious miracle a messianic miracle by that man named Jesus. Now, looking at this passage here, readers of the Gospel of John who've not yet believed in the Lord Jesus and are intimidated by religious authorities, for these people, the healed man becomes an encouragement to believe and face the illogical scorn or trouble of the prominent people in their societies. On the other hand, the man's parents are a vivid example of people that are not going to face reality, are not going to face the truth. They don't want to be persecuted.